Hi, I'm Lydia Crispens. I'm a lecturer in LaSalle College of the Arts, Singapore. I teach in the School of Fashion, bachelor degree course in fashion design and textile. I'm glad that I have the opportunity to be able to share my research exploration in this conference. My topic for the presentations is process of interiorization, exploration of a novel approach to a fashion technique pedagogy. The experimentation explored how emotions and memories play the vital roles for the interiorization process that trigger the emergence of imagination as an outcome, which led to creating the creative output of the process for the new fashion technique exploration, blind draping, and blind drafting. Before I explain what is blind draping and blind drafting, I'll begin with an introduction of the technique that are fundamentals in fashion making technique. Drafting and draping. Draping is the process of positioning and pinning fabric on a 3D dress form or human body to develop a fluid structure of a garment design, while drafting is a method of drawing patterns on paper with mechanical precision using body measurements. The methodology that I'm presenting today is the outcome of the process of an active engagement and analyzing the students' experimentations through experiential learning as discoveries and findings that includes the theoretical framework in the interiorization process itself. The final outcome of the methodology is open up to a line of research inquiry to develop a new approach to fashion technique methods that allow students or designers to have the options of exploring research-led practice within themselves. The experimentation led me to question the possible situation that may happen, but it was never explored in fashion technique. So I have questions such as, what if you are not able to use your eyes to get informations? What if you let your thoughts or the surroundings inform your felt body? There are two parts that sum up the methodology and the outcome of the novel approach fashion technique. We'll look at what is blind draping first, as this was the first part of the study of the experimentation that mold the process of interiorization. Blind draping is the creative output or process of interiorization, I call it short form here, POI, that requires the students or designers to close his or her eyes while doing the draping using the POI, which asks the designer or the students to tap into his or her episodic memory that will evoke emotions or vice versa, and to externalize the inner thoughts experience to a physical product using the blind draping technique. So here are some of the images while myself and my students are doing the blind draping activity. As you can see from the image itself, the researcher or the designer, as I would say, closes the eyes and started to drape the material onto the dress form. So this allowed the interiorization process to take place. So with that brings us to look at the diagram of the interiorization process to understand better how it happens. Memory that will evoke the emotion will lead to the interiorization process, which is the phenomenological notions of the mind in the original space. Why I have mentioned the phenomenological is because that other than the researcher or the designer or the student itself who are experiencing that moment, others will not be able to know what is going on in that person's minds. So this is one phenomenon that we need to take note of while doing the process of interiorization. So with this initial stage of experimentation, I continue to explore the method and finding other possibilities to strengthen the method of the process. As said in this quote, exploring experience by simply being immersed in it, rather than explicitly being aware of it. So this quote explains very well what I was doing during the experimentation, be it with myself or with my student subject. So with further experimentation with my student subject, I came up with this process of immersion. This process leads me to my finding that theorize the matter. There are two specific points that I picked up. after analyzing my students' experimentation using the process. So, the 2 points are atmospheric space by Herman Schmidt and collective unconscious by Carl Jung. I'll explain furthermore. So, in this diagram, I borrowed Smith's concept of atmospheric space to formulate this process. The process of immersion, as shown on the figure, illustrates the site immersion process should be carried out by the researcher. The researcher needs to locate a site to carry out the process and wholly immerse herself or himself in that atmospheric space. In this setting, atmosphere refers to a sensorial and affective quality widespread in space. It is the particular shade or tone that determines how one feels about his or her surroundings. The referred space in Smith's context and spaces are spaces without area, particularly space of sound that traversed by the rhythmic and tonal movement suggestion of the sound. Examples are piercing noise, diminishing echo, the synesthetic mesh property of the sound as a far-reaching sonorous resonance of a gong or a shrill or a sharp whistle, and etc. The notions of the atmospheric space is vital for the starting point. The process requires the researcher to close his or her eyes so that he or she can begin to immerse himself or herself in the space at the chosen site. By closing one's eyes, the researcher will use his or her other senses, predominantly auditory in this instance. The immersive experience allows the researcher auditory sense to collect the data from the space, such as the soundscape, the movement of people, and any form of emotions and feelings that were gathered at that particular site and time. Hence, I theorize that the researcher at this occurrence will act as the apparatus of the material body to absorb and internalize the external experience of the atmospheric space. This process is imperative for the next interiorization process, as the process of immersion is the first step for the researcher to inaugurate the interiorization process. So let us take a look at this chart here. The difference in location plays an essential role in the process. The distinctive feelings that my student has gotten from the site illustrate how different spaces could affect significantly to one felt's body. Smith, that's best known as the founder of the new phenomenology, defined that the felt body of a person as the epitome of everything that one can perceive as belonging to oneself, invincibly, not always within the boundaries of one's material body. When my student was in that space, the occurrences around her will transform her felt body and affect her differently according to the different space. This evidence was apparent from the table. Next, I look into what's happening to the mind of the researcher, for the instance, the mind of my student at that point of time, when she or he was in that space. After analyzing the data through interviews and understanding what she went through during her subconscious mind at that period of time while she was closing her eyes, I deduced that Jung's collective unconscious explained what had happened to her subconscious mind. Here's an example to explain that. When she was in that process, she embodied the researcher's self to be wholly immersed in that location. This space allowed unexpected thoughts to happen in her mind unconsciously. Analyzing what she had shared during her immersion process with me, none of the occurrence made sense to her at all. She had no inkling why she saw the thoughts in her mind. As she has no past thoughts from her life past experiences, it seemed that there is a possibility that her personal unconscious, a compilation of feelings, emotions, behaviors, and memories, had informed her conscious thought. Personal unconscious complexes by Jung are profoundly affected by the collective unconscious, which is primarily made up of the archetypes that suggest the presence of definite form in the mind. They are always present and everywhere. In Jungian terms, the psyche can bring into an enigmatic imaginary and consciousness these associated complexes in order to accommodate and compensate conscious life. When unconscious content breaks into the unconsciousness, it can lead into an increase in one's development. The psyches possibly caused the various scenes that she saw in her unconscious mind in that collective unconscious. So with this immersion process, I further on to update the process of interiorization as shown in this diagram. The updated process of the interiorizations encompasses the process of immersion as the center of the focus point as the central factor to start the process of interiorization. From the diagram, the shaded component of the process activates both emotions and memories. Here, I borrowed Margaret Boden's concept of conceptual space to explain the students' complexes. Boden explained that conceptual space consists of several qualities dimension, such as a spatial dimension, temperature, weight, and etc. It can represent various kinds of informations in the space, and anything is possible, but only the artist will perceive what has happened. One will embody his or her artist self to experience and gather these informations and explore the creativity that spark in the conceptual space. It will therefore contribute to the emergence of imagination, which I have referred to the phenomenological space of the unconscious mind. The internalized process will be externalized as the creative output. It was a challenge to define imagination in this experience. Hence, I drew Gregory Curry and Ian Ravenscroft's definitions of imagination. They distinguish creative imaginations, which is infusing thoughts in an unpredictable and unorthodox way, sensory imagination, perception-like experience in the absence of appropriate stimuli. Last, the recreative imagination is the possibility to perceive and learn about the world from a viewpoint far from that thought. Imagination is a mix of assemblage or processes involving the emergence idea relationship and memory. They all belong to the mental processes, whether they are receptive or productive. This is important for the artist to explore the mental space as it covers all of the domain of thoughts and enable human beings to come up with the idea that are new, surprising, and valuable. They enable us to be creative. So the process of immersion is a starting point, and this is a vital role in the process of interiorization. So the process of interiorization needs to be carried out in a space whereby no distractions from the exterior surroundings, whereas the immersion process needs the exteriority of the space to inform the interiority of the felt body. At the same time, process of interiorization is the process towards a projection outcome. Once the researchers succumb to that state, the interiorization process then be able to take place. So, in conclusion, by using this process, designers or students are able to physicalize their internal thoughts and imagination to a physical product that acts as a vessel of memories, emotions, and imagination. This experimentation certainly opens up a whole new way to how we can create fashion design through personal emotion, something that is very intangible to an tangible outcome. I hope that students and designers are able to continue experimenting different modes of research. As what David Kolb said, learning is a process whereby knowledge is created through the transformations of experience. So with that, I end this presentation. I hope you have enjoyed and thank you very much.